Hello, boys and girls. It's finally time to review this game, or at least talk about it a little bit more to detail. I have been playing it quite a bit. I'm late, probably because all the big boy reviews are already out, but I don't care that much. I only care about my opinion and your opinion. So I have to preface that I did buy this game with my own money day one, which is an unusual occurrence because I very rarely buy games day one nowadays. But I wanted to give this game a chance because the pre-release footage kind of convinced me. And also, I have to be honest, I kind of fell for the nostalgia slop bait because, I mean, zombies, Raccoon City. I was curious about where they were gonna go with the story. And yeah, there's a lot to say about the story. The story is a clusterfuck, but not in a good way, in a bad way. It ruins years of lore buildup. It sets up terrain for major retcons, even retroactive major retcons. So yeah, I'll talk about the story a little bit in this video, but I think I'll also make a video which is more spoilery, where I rant about the story, which is probably the worst aspect. As a Resident Evil, as a classic, as a long date Resident Evil fan, the story in this game is an insult to people's intelligence. But yeah, let's start talking about the game itself. So the striking characteristic of Requiem is definitely the double character. And I have to say they have nailed it overall because the two characters, Leon and Grace, feel quite different between each other. Grace is obviously more focused on the stealth, avoiding combat, more geared towards the classic Resident Evil kind of gameplay, you can say, but also with a little bit of modern horror influences, stuff like Amnesia or Outlast. Those kinds of games really don't even have combat. I don't know. I haven't played those games, but most of them probably don't have combat. And even though Grace can use weapons, the game really pushes the idea that you should use stealth to take down enemies, or if possible, avoid them entirely. Which I don't think it's the ideal course of action, because if you rely too much on stealth, if you play this game like Metal Gear Solid, going for the big boss rank, it's kind of boring, honestly, because stealth is not the focus of this game. If you play on standard, at least, because the game really wants you to go stealth with Grace on Insanity. You can't avoid it. On standard, other than the actual beginning of the care center, let's say, well, you have to gather a little bit of resources and find a weapon. Then, after you find a weapon, you have enough ammo to actually take on almost anything without too much issue. But on Insanity, you have to use stealth with Grace for a good chunk. Like avoiding confrontation is vital because you will get killed over and over. Otherwise, she dies immediately on that difficulty. So yeah, stealth, in my opinion, is not the focus unless the game really forces you to, like on Insanity. Grace has weapons, not the same weapons as Leon. She mostly gets access to her handgun. Uh, Leon's Requiem Magnum, but only for a short period of time. And other weapons like Molotovs and acid cocktails. But for the most part, these are her weapons. Yeah, she has weaker weapons than Leon, but she can also use the blood injector, hemolytic injector, which is a tool you can craft, yeah, but you can also find it laying around. And that tool can kill enemies with one injection. So it's geared more towards the stealth gameplay because you take enemies from behind with that thing. It's an insta kill basically for most enemies, for most regular enemies. You can also use the hemolytic injector after stunning an enemy. So it's pretty much a one shot kill. You use a few resources to craft it, but yeah, it removes completely an enemy in one shot. She also has access to knives that can be used as defensive items, like they were in Resident Evil 2 Remake, for example. So they can also break. But you can also use them regularly, like regular knives. Uh, so you can damage the enemies with those and so on. There's, unlike Ethan in Resident Evil 7, there's no block, so you cannot block, but you can defend yourself with the knives if the enemies grab you. So Grace is pretty much Resident Evil 7 Ethan, but without the block, you can say. At least if you play her in first person, because you can choose third and first person for either character. And there's quite a lot of differences in that sense. And Grace also gets access to item boxes, so like a proper Resident Evil classic character. Leon instead is more action oriented. He has his axe that can be used like the knife in for remake to parry the attacks to stealth kill enemies and so on. Except that you don't need the merchant to repair the axe. You can just do it yourself by sharpening it with your tool. It just leaves you vulnerable for a little bit, but that's pretty much the only trade-off of sharpening the axe. And yeah, Leon feels pretty much almost like a more tame version of Resident Evil 6. I think he works pretty well. The problem I have with him is that the guns, mostly his guns, because he has the most guns in the game, don't feel that good except for the magnums. The guns in this game don't feel that good to shoot. Like most of the shotguns don't even decapitate enemies. So shotguns, we're talking Leon because Leon is the only character who gets access to the shotguns. And he does not get access to the item box or anything. The thing that it's exclusive to Leon is the weapon box, which is pretty much kind of like the merchant, but it's just a box with a computer interface, which kind of sucks. I don't like how it looks. It looks like too Call of Duty like for my taste. The UI is kind of a mess on that thing. And you get points to upgrade buy stuff on in the weapon box by killing enemies. That's pretty much it. You get points, money by killing enemies. So, sort of like the other games like Resident Evil 4. Now, what I think works with both Leon and Grace, Grace feels very like focused in terms of gameplay. You have the choice to fight, the choice to avoid enemies, but for the most part, I think it's best played with a mix of both. Leon instead as it feels slightly worse than Resident Evil 4, I would say. His parry, especially the parry, is not that good. It feels awkward to pull off, and he also faces the most bosses. Actually, I think all the bosses in this game are for Leon. Grace doesn't really have bosses. The only boss she has is the girl. She's the deformed monster that stalks her from time to time, but you don't even get a proper boss fight with her. You get some sort of stealth section. Yeah, you can fight her off, but you cannot kill her. The girl sort of reminds me of Lisa Trevor, and this is interesting because I think there are some setups. This game has a lot of setups, like assets put in place that can be reused for other remakes, which I will talk about later. But yeah, and yeah, the enemies that Leon faces are for the most part just regular zombies. Some of the enemies are the same between Grace and Leon, but then Leon gets access to specific enemies tailored more to his style of combat. Which honestly, the enemies that Leon faces are kind of lame because they feel like generic Walking Dead zombies. When he goes to Raccoon City, yeah, he'll face generic Walking Dead looking zombies that mostly just use weapons like batons, like pieces of debris, axes, and so on, rudimental spears. So it's I don't know. I just don't like that much the enemies Leon faces. The ones that both Leon and Grace face are more interesting because they are the zombies you see in the care center. They have like more personality, more charm. There's the like butcher zombie, the singer zombie. I think it was an interesting idea to give them traits from their previous life, which I definitely like approve of because they feel very unique between each other. Most of those zombies have their own behaviors and AIs, which makes them very interesting. But after you leave the care center and you go to Raccoon City, the game becomes a gray fest with the like, House of the Dead, Walking Dead zombies that use weapons, and it kind of loses part of its charm. Now, the combat, even in those sections, in the Raccoon City sections, is quite fun, but I think that the worst offender in that sense are the BSAA zombies, which can still use guns. Now, like zombies, actual zombies, decrepit, decomposed zombies that can shoot guns quite like accurately. They are pretty precise when they shoot you. I think it's a dumb concept, even for Resident Evil. It was something that I back in the day when I did play stuff like Zombie Revenge. I always thought, okay, this fits Zombie Revenge because it's kind of a silly game. If you don't know, Zombie Revenge is a spin off from House of the Dead. So yeah, it feels kind of silly, but it fits Zombie Revenge and House of the Dead. But Resident Evil, to have zombies that shoot guns, I don't know. It just feels wrong. Like they jumped the shark a bit too much to have decomposing zombies using guns, at least in that way. But yeah, I mean, you shoot them, you kill them. Now, what I think is the worst offender when it comes to the combat in this game is the movement in the third person camera. Because like the developers have promoted, have sponsored the game to be played with Grace in first person, but with Leon in third person. Now the two like the two cameras do play quite differently because in first person camera you run slightly slower, but your movement are a bit more precise. There's not like that much inertia in your movements and controls, so it's more ideal if you don't like how Resident Evil 4 remake feels, and consequently this game, because it feels even worse in terms of inertia, in my opinion. Like the movement in third person, it just doesn't feel good. It feels even more clunky than Resident Evil 4 remake. There's just that inertia feeling that I cannot stand. When I move left and right, when I strafe left and right, there's like half a second delay before the character actually starts moving in the opposite direction. To give you an example, it's just like Resident Evil 4 remake, but a little bit worse, if that's even possible. So the third person, I think at in some occasions is kind of unplayable in third person. In fact, on higher difficulties, I suggest you play with both characters in first person because your movement are more precise. In third person, you run a bit faster, but that's it. Honestly, there are not many advantages other than that. But especially with Grace, there's an interesting difference because with Grace, you stumble in third person. And I think it's done to balance the fact that you actually run faster in third person, while in first person, of course, you do not stumble. I appreciate the effort of giving the possibility to play both in first and third person, but honestly, I would rather just have a more playable third person with less inertia, kind of like Resident Evil 2 remake was, let's say. So yeah, it's in this sense it's very hit and miss because if I don't like how the characters move, it's something that's gonna make the game less enjoyable from the moment to moment gameplay. Leon feels very heavy. So yeah, I suggest if you're like me, I suggest you just play both characters in first person. Now, something rather unpleasant that carries over from 4 remake is the fact that the enemies can damage you just by touching you, which was one of the worst things implemented in Resident Evil 4 remake, in my opinion. Like as soon as an enemy touched you in that game, they dealt full damage. Like always, frame one, you got full damage for the grab, which was ludicrous. It should have been gradual. Like they touch you, you take I don't know 5-10% damage, and then if they actually attack you any further, you take more damage. But no, you get full damage frame one, and here it's an in between because the enemies can damage you even just by touching you. Sometimes an enemy will put their hands on you and you manage to slip away because you're running. It happens quite often, actually. And you take damage just because of that. With Grace is very noticeable because she has less health overall. Not so much with Leon, but with Grace, you might be fine. An enemy touches you, and you're on caution. And I said, "What happened?" At first, I said, "What's going on? Why am I taking damage? Nobody has beaten me." No, you take damage just for enemies putting their hands on you, even if they don't bite you or stab you or anything. Which I don't really like because it's it feels like it's a cheap way for the developers to raise the difficulty. You can argue that you can abuse the defensive items like you did in Resident Evil 1 remake because you can just get grabbed and use the defensive item as free out of jail cards that damage the enemies. But if I'm good enough to stack up all those defensive items, like let me use them. It feels kind of unfair to have such a feature even on normal, on standard. I could sort of understand on insanity, but even this is something that happens even on standard. So yeah, it feels like an extremely punishing like game design decision, which I don't agree with. Like find some kind of compromise. But yeah, these are mostly the biggest problems in terms of raw gameplay, in my opinion. Now, in terms of split between the two characters, I would say the game is evenly split. The only real problem I have in this sense is that at the beginning there's not much homogeneity when it comes to the character action, in the sense that you play way more as Grace in the beginning compared to Leon. Honestly, it feels like you play Leon and poof, it's already over. You don't really get the possibility to get accustomed much to Leon's gameplay at the beginning, because both Leon's sections like last 10 minutes, and then you get like the opposite of that as soon as you reach Racoon City. As soon as you reach that place, you start playing with Leon for a very long portion of the game. And that's what when you get pretty much really accustomed to his gameplay, in my opinion. And that's also when you unlock the weapon box in the first playthrough for the first time, because on Insanity it's available from the start, but on standard you get access to it when you reach Racoon City. Because the game, to be honest, the game with Leon starts in Racoon City before you just get a little bit of taste, a little bit of a snippet of Leon. Up until the care center, it's Grace Playground, then it becomes Leon, and then you get to play a little bit more after that at the end with Grace, and then the game is over. So I would have preferred, honestly, if the game was more evenly split in terms of pacing, because it's kind of jarring to move from Leon to Grace that fast. I wish like there was an option to just let me play all the Grace sections at once and all the Leon sections at once, because at least I don't get the shell shock from moving to a slower gameplay to a faster gameplay. Because after a while, after you've played the big portion with Leon, going back to Grace will start feeling a little bit more jarring, in my opinion. So, but it's not like the pacing is overall okay. It's just that I wish they did a better job at evenly splitting the gameplay sections. But I mean, like I said, I actually like what they did with the double character. They feel pretty different to play. They are both fun in their own ways. The only real problem I have with the gameplay itself is that Leon feels a little bit awkward, especially when he's with his pair. It feels less fluid overall. And Grace is better. Grace's gameplay feels more crafted, more well crafted. Leon at times kind of feels like an afterthought, to be honest. But they are both fun in their own way. I usually feel like the two characters are a cop out, like I said in one of my previous videos. But this time I think they did an overall good job. The two characters have a reason to exist in this game. They complete each other pretty well, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to the location themselves, I have to say that the start of the game is pretty slow. I mean, you can say, well, every Resident Evil starts slow. Sort of. The problem with this game is that at the beginning it's very slow. It has the type of intro that's a problem to replay because it feels like a slog, kind of like Resident Evil 7 was. The first section with Grace feels a bit of a slog. Then there are other sections which kill replayability, which Capcom seems to be very fond of in the later years, in the latest years, for whatever reason. Like the intro is okay. I mean, it's kind of slow, but it's on subsequent playthroughs you sort of dispose of it very relatively quickly, let's say. But after that, there are odd choices that I will talk about very soon. But first, let me tell you what the actual locations are. So there's Brentwood, which is the start of the game. You get to play briefly with Leon and Grace. So first Grace and then Leon. Then you go to the care center. You play a little bit as Grace. Then Leon comes, and then you play again as Grace for a bigger portion. Then you play more as Leon on in the care center. Then after that, there's an extra section with Grace, kind of short, to wrap up the Chronic Care Center. Then you move to Raccoon City, and I would say between Raccoon City and the Chronic Care Center, the Chronic Care Center feels more like the Spencer Mansion overall. which is very good. I mean, it's probably the best location in the game. No wonder it was the level that was in in the trailers. Dragon City is it's kind of a sandbox, which is bigger than the average Resident Evil sandbox, like the police station in 2 will be, for example. It feels very similar conceptually to the village in 8. It's that bigger open sandbox that connects more or less that interconnects with with itself, let's say, because you go to one point, then you end up in another place, but then you can travel to most of the locations from one point. Then you open that door that was locked, and then it connects, kind of like an Ouroboros. So sort of like the previous Resident Evil sandboxes. Like you always end up unlocking the door that was locked from the other side, and everything connects. You unlock shortcuts and so on. So like Dragon City is I liked it overall, but the problem with Dragon City is that it feels like it was added just because of nostalgia slop. Like I said, it doesn't really add much of anything, especially when you go back to the RPD. I didn't feel anything honestly, mostly because you can barely tell it's the RPD because everything is destroyed. There's very few rooms still in place that you can actually visit, and the one you can actually visit don't really remind me of the original RPD. It's remake 2 RPD, which feels very different. And yeah, I didn't feel anything revisiting the RPD because it's remake 2 RPD. Same thing with the flashbacks about Kendo. Honestly, I don't care about remake 2 Kendo. I don't care about his daughter. That whole thing, like I said in my critique on the remakes, the whole thing was added for sentimental manipulation, emotional manipulation, to make you go, "Oh, look at the poor child." Like the game already had a child in danger. We had Sherry. There was no need to add another child. Like Kendo, I don't think Kendo was ever told. We were ever told that Kendo had a daughter. Kendo has a brother. They could have done something with his brother. They could have done something, I don't know, with some other civilians, because Kendo was also helping civilians, giving guns away for free. So I never liked the what they did with him and his his fan fiction daughter in the remake. And yeah, like Raccoon City is okay, it's fun, but the visit to the RPD is not that good in my opinion. Like Metal Gear Solid 4, to give you an example, did better the return to Shadow Moses. This doesn't feel nearly as impactful as that did. Now, after that, there's an extra location which is the umpteenth Umbrella secret facility, and you also get to revisit slightly the orphanage from Resident Evil 2 remake. Now, in the orphanage, there's something that's kind of annoying because they make you play as a child in a flashback, which is something I will also discuss in more in detail when I talk about the story. And yeah, it's another section that it's kind of a slog on repeated playthroughs, but I think with some corner cutting you can resolve it pretty quickly, or at least earlier than what the game expects you to. Like you can cut some sequences and lasts a few minutes less than what's it supposed to do. So, and when it comes to the umbrella facility, instead, it's something that it's your usual laboratory, modern Resident Evil laboratory that they like to insert in all the games at this point. It's this super clean facility that's very generic. It's pretty much like Nest too. or the next one, you can say, from Resident Evil 2 remake. So apparently, Raccoon City in the remake timeline, or how do we want to call it, is full of secret umbrella facilities underground that all look the same. They are all gigantic. Pretty much, Raccoon City has no sewer system. It's all umbrella facilities because there's the nest too, and then there's the arc, which is also very big. Like, what are they even doing with this thing? I don't know. They clearly misunderstood what the original games were going for with the Umbrella Laboratories. The Umbrella Laboratories in the original games were sort of covert operations, you can call them. They weren't like giant labs, super technological. They were the opposite. They were kind of small, and they were pretty filthy overall because they, I mean, a little bit probably because after they fell in ruin, the nobody cleaned them up or sterilized them. But it was also like showed that way to give you the impression that Umbrella was a company that was rotten to the core, both morally and I guess you can say in terms of people. The people who worked inside didn't really give much of a shit. It's your usual stereotype of the Umbrella employee. That's oh, I today I fed two kids to this BOW. I'm really happy to be working here. The day after, oh, this work sucks because everybody's dying, everybody's getting mauled by the BOW that's escaping. Yeah, that good kind of stuff. So to give you, I mean, the labs in the older games were made, in my opinion, that's how I see it. Were made to be that way to show the contrast between the public image of Umbrella and the actual Umbrella, which is a despicable company full of despicable, evil, and morally corrupt people. So yeah, yeah, the arc is pretty much like I said. It's also a little bit probably there's asset recycling, but I think it's very unoriginal as a location. Probably the arc is probably the least interesting section in the game because it's stuff that we already seen 100 times in the remakes. So now I want to discuss a little bit the two characters, Leon and Grace, not just in terms of gameplay like I did before, which I think in terms of gameplay they have differentiated them well enough. I also think I forgot to mention that Grace can craft magnum ammo, but Leon cannot. So that's another interesting difference. Because I mean, Leon, if Leon could craft magnum ammo, it probably would be a little bit too strong. So they only make Grace left like craft the magnum ammo, even though she barely has access to magnums in her playthrough, only in the first portion of the game. And also, I find it funny how like she can craft bullets with blood because you can go around siphoning up blood from the enemies to craft stuff, which is kind of odd, honestly. Like, how are you even crafting stuff with blood? But it's a game mechanic. Don't think too much about it. And yeah, when it comes to the characters, like I think Grace is okay as a character. She's a bit awkward, but she's that kind of awkward that's not too annoying, I guess you can say. Even though I think she is pretty much Rebecca. Like if you think Rebecca, but worse in every way, that's Grace. Now, how much worse you can say? Not that much worse, but still worse. I think Rebecca was a better character. She was nerdy. She was still like funny. Like she had like social skills, despite being sort of a nerdy, cutesy girl. Like in her interactions with Billy, like I could shoot, you know. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And Grace also has her moments, but I think her being a shut-in is a bit too on the nose. Like they're trying to pander too much to the Zoomers, I guess you can say, with this kind of behavior. And but overall, I like her. She's a likable character overall. She's not a bossy girl, your usual Western female character. She's overall likable, a less likable Rebecca, you can say. In terms of looks, I think she's very cute. But the problem is that they gave her an out her standard outfit is kind of very unflattering on her because it's very baggy. It makes her look like her posture is very bad. So I don't know. It's her FBI outfit that you can unlock as a costume is definitely more fitting, in my opinion. It makes her look better. Although I don't think we will see her again after this game. She feels like a one-off character, to be honest. But I guess we'll see. When it comes to Leon, instead, I just don't like this interpretation on Leon for a number of reasons. The biggest one is probably the fact that he doesn't feel like a genuine character. He feels very superficial. Whoever is writing him doesn't really understand what he is about, in my opinion, because he keeps claiming to want to save people, but his actions show otherwise. Because whenever he has the chance to save someone, a lot of the time he just doesn't do it, or he tries it half-assedly, like in the beginning of the game with the nurse that he pretty much lets her die. Now I've seen people making excuses saying she working for the bad guy. I don't think she knows the extent of what's going on in that facility because she's a new hire. So it's not like they're showing her how to experiment on people with the T virus. I don't think she was really aware of much. Maybe a little bit, but not really, because otherwise, if she was aware, she would have realized that the doctor was a zombie. But she didn't seem to know at all. So I don't know. But I mean, even without that fact, I think Leon is just badly written because if you remember, when it comes to Resident Evil 6, this is the same guy that was trying to protect the fake Ada that was responsible for the death of thousands of people just so she could be a key witness because she knew what was really going on and she could actually point to the real like culprit. So Leon went against Chris to protect the fake Ada because of this. So like the nurse, even let's say, assuming she was a bad, she was in on the whole thing, even though I doubt. Like I said, I think she was pretty clueless. Also because she comes back to warn Leon instead of just going like running away. So like him letting her die just feels very off character because she could have been a useful witness to to extract information from to know more about Victor or whatever. But no, like the game is full of mischaracterizations like this or dumb scenes where the characters do nothing and just let things happen. It's something that it's very common with the modern games, with the modern Resident Evil games. So and yeah, Leon is posturing too much. Like I said, he pretends to care about people. Like he pretends a lot about people who he could do nothing to help, like the like Kendo or Marvin, for example. He couldn't have done anything to prevent their deaths. But the people who he could actually have saved, like for example, or at least helped, in a meaningful way, like Ben in Resident Evil 2 remake, or like the nerds at the beginning of the game. He doesn't care about. He doesn't give them a second thought. So that's, I don't know. I find them that thing pretty annoying in terms of writing when it comes to his character. But I'll talk about it more when I talk about the overall story. There are a lot of moments where you just go and say, "What the fuck is this guy doing? How has he been How has he been able to survive all this time while being such a dumbass?" But yeah, in terms of character, I think Leon is the coolest in this game he's ever looked. I mean, no wonder because they gave the woman on the team free reign to design him, and I mean, it's okay, whatever. But then they really went conservative with Grace in terms of physical appeal. I guess what can you do? But at least she, like I said, she's cute. And yeah, when it comes to the characters and their personalities, like I said, I just don't like Leon, modern Leon. He feels too fake. He doesn't feel like a genuine, honest character like he was in the previous games. But at least, oh, he looks cool, so I guess there's that. Now, when it comes to the presentation and various other related aspects, I think the game nails most of it, starting from the menus, the music. Some of the tracks are pretty cool, except the single track that plays as a battle team in Racoon City when you fight zombies. When you fight zombies in Racoon City, you just get this battle team that's always the same. Like it's sort of like a dubstep light, I guess you can say. It's not bad, but like the series is been known for very interesting and catchy battle themes, even just in Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5. So I don't know that kind of weird. It's just, I don't know. I don't think it fits very well the combat, the moment to moment combat as well. Also because it's like just a few seconds and it repeats over and over and over. But yeah, the rest of the music is okay, especially the one in the menu, both when you start the game and when you finish the game, because the music changes. And I really like both themes in the menu. What I find interesting in terms of choice when it comes to the soundtrack instead is that they decided to reference the Resident Evil 2 RPD hall theme. So the theme when you enter the hall in the RPD in the original Resident Evil 2, and that theme plays when you visit the RPD in Requiem, which is very odd because in the original remake they didn't even bother to include that theme, other than very slightly when you enter the um, the police station in the Resident Evil 2 remake. But other than that, it was total silence. I still haven't forgotten that these mofos at Capcom put the original Resident Evil 2 soundtrack behind a paywall because you had to buy the deluxe edition to play the Resident Evil 2 soundtrack. They didn't even bother to remix the soundtrack for that game in the remake, and that fucking bothered me a lot. Which is something it was expected to have some kind of music, like Resident Evil 1 remake had. Nope. The Resident Evil 2 remake is pretty much almost a mute game in that sense. Very, very, very little music, and the one it has is very generic. So it feels like they are pandering to the wrong crowd. Because for me, you should have included a proper soundtrack in the remake. If you're trying to half-ass this attempt now at nostalgia, it's not working. It's too late. They should have done better before. As for the rest, I think this game has various different influences from what I've seen. I don't know if like they are wanted, like they actually wanted to reference other properties, or maybe they were on accident. They referenced them on accident because I don't know. But I think some of them are wanted. For example, in the part in Raccoon City where you go to the ruined buildings, it really reminds you of the part in Last of Us 1 where you go into the city very shortly after the beginning of the game, where you are already escorting Ellie, and you go to the city that is in ruin. I think it's Boston. Yeah, and you pass through the ruined buildings, and that section in Raccoon City is very similar to that part, just to name a few. Then there are some enemies that give me Splatterhouse vibes. For example, there's a boss with Leon. I think it's his first real boss. It's like inside the Chronic Care Center, but in a part of the Chronic Center which is sort of like a wooden house. I think it's a part that it's undergoing restructuring. So it's either the attic or actually you start in the attic in that part and then you go down. So it's a part that you don't get to visit with Grace, but it's under restructuring. And it really gives me Splatterhouse vibe because you go like you see there's this huge deformed monster that's eating a body, and he turns around and then watches you and sees you, and he starts chasing you. And that really reminds me of Splatterhouse because there has been a similar situation in that series of monster, gigantic, grotesque monsters eating bodies and then chasing you. Also, there's another monster that really gives me Splatterhouse vibes later on, but it's kind of a spoiler thing, so I'm not gonna mention it. I'll talk about it in the story video. And yeah, there's like I said, also Walking Dead with the in Dragon City with the zombies. They are kind of look generic, to be honest. So there's some interesting references which I like. Overall, I like. The game is stylish, is interesting in this sense. It's definitely not an anonymous game. They really did a good job overall. Also, there is a part that's really reminiscent of the Evil Within one in Raccoon City, but yeah, you'll get to see for yourself. Actually, I'll show the footage if I can on video. But yeah, there are some interesting influences, and I sort of like them because the references either willingly or involuntarily are always cool if done properly. When it comes to the bosses, I think like for the most part they are okay. Some of them are kind of the same, just with a slightly different structure because you get chased, like the spider, the giant spider, and the chunk, which is the fat guy, the really fat guy at the which is the first boss. Kind of feel the same because they chase you in an environment that is sort of labyrinthic, very narrow corridors and so on. And then there's other bosses like the tyrant. You get to fight a Mr. X, which honestly it's pretty much the same model as the Resident Evil 2 remake Mr. X. You would think that in 30 years they will have improved on that model, like in the like in the classic series, because for example in Resident Evil Damnation, Leon faces a tyrant that it's an improved model over the one he faced in Raccoon City. It's like way taller, stronger, and it also has an even better armor coating. But no, here they just make you face again the same tyrant as Resident Evil 2 remake, which I don't know. It feels very sloppy. It feels inconsistent and sloppy. It's just like a nostalgia bait slop for a game that's not even 7 years old. which that's pretty much what the whole Raccoon City RPD part feels like. And yeah, the other bosses are okay. There are when it comes to the main bad guys, which are Victor, Gideon, but there is also another bad guy, which is yeah. I don't know much about him because it's not like they really specify anything about his backstory, but it's implied that he's an Albert Wesker clone or an imitation. Victor at the end calls him an imitation. So he's pretty much Wesker from Temu, you can say. But he really doesn't do much because you don't even get to fight him in a boss fight, just in a cutscene. And he dies at the end. So I don't get what the point of this character is. Just to have, I guess, a Wesker sort of clone in the game that looks cool. Another nostalgia bait slop. You look at Wesker. It's possible that they are setting up. There are some things that may be set up. Bring back Wesker also in terms of story. They may be setting up some of them to maybe not if you don't like if we don't have like the real one, at least some sort of clone. Thanks to the memory transfer process that they were studying in this game, but we don't really know much. And yeah, I was mentioning before, there are some things that make me think they are gonna recycle content into other various remakes. Like for example, there's a motorcycle section that I think it could be recycled for an eventual Code Veronica remake, because it's possible that Claire may have a motorcycle in the Code Veronica remake. Who knows? Then there's other stuff like the girl, which seems like Lisa Trevor. Then there's a lot of black zombies, uh, which really makes you think they are gonna make Resident Evil 5 very soon. Then there is a part at the end of the game, which is it's just a room, but it's what a replica of a Spencer mansion in the RE engine could look like. It's just a room, but that's what the eventual Spencer mansion will probably look like in a Resident Evil 1 remake. So there are tidbits here and there that really make you think, yeah, they're gonna remake everything, everything, even six probably at some point. Who knows? And the last character I wanna mention is Alyssa Ashcroft, which yeah, they kind of bait you with her because oh look, Alyssa Ashcroft, and then she dies immediately at the beginning of the game. Like, what's the point of having her as a character just to offer immediately? It feels like they just put her in as a as a fan bait because she is sort of a beloved character between the fan base, at least people who actually play the games. But no, they just kill her off, and that's it. She doesn't do much. She's just in flashbacks and cutscenes, so you don't even get to interact much with her. You don't know much. She's just a vehicle to further the story at some point, but that's pretty much it. So it's kind of a disappointment what they did with her. And I also it kind of made you think maybe they are gonna also show you the other Outbreak characters, but no, we don't know anything about the other Outbreak characters. What can you do? I think the real bad part, like the worst part, absolutely, is the story. There are too many things that don't make sense, too many retcons that really makes you wonder why are they doing this? Because they are clearly with what they are doing in this game, they are rewriting everything, everything post Resident Evil 4 is being rewritten with this game. I mean, they already have rewritten partially what happened even in the original trilogy, because there have been quite a few retcons already in that sense. But yeah, they are rewriting everything post 4. There's a lot of things that are gonna change. Uh, in this game, Spencer apparently gets a change of heart, which comes out of nowhere. They're trying to set up the connections, which has never been like a gigantic organization, into the next big bad guy. I guess after Umbrella, I don't know. Like this game pretty much was the backstory of this game. It was all the connections. I'll talk more about this in the story video, but yeah, it's kind of dumb. There are too many things that don't make sense, too many things that really makes you wonder. But like, did the guy who wrote the story, did the guy or I think it's a guy, yeah, it's a guy, because it's the same person who wrote the story from the Shadows of Rose DLC. Did the guy who write the story for this game even know the lore at all? Did he ever play any of the games before? I don't know, the recent ones, because there's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, like the whole Raccoon City syndrome, Raccoon City curse, how it's called. It doesn't make sense, because one of the few things that you get to know about the T virus back in the original trilogy is that it's not airborne as a virus, because otherwise everybody would have gotten infected. Every protagonist from the various games would have gotten infected, but they didn't. And in fact, when it happened to Jill, that she got infected in 3 original, because she got hit by a tentacle, a nemesis tentacle, it really makes you go, oh shit, things got real because she got infected. It's canon that she gets infected, unlike unlike the other protagonists, which never got infected because they never got wounded by a BOW, in the other games. But no, here you get the Raccoon City syndrome, which apparently Leon, Sherry, and other people are infected with the T virus, despite them not being infected at all, ever. Actually, Sherry was infected with the G virus, but the G virus like it's stronger than the T virus. It's just a derivative. It's derivate from the T virus. So if you're vaccinated against the G virus, you should also be immune already to the T virus. So, but also like it really makes you question Leon being part of the DSO. You can imagine DSO leadership to like you can imagine them to ask to their employees to get vaccinated against the T virus. So they get vaccinated against the T virus, so they shouldn't get infected. T virus was never airborne. At this point, the cures for the T virus are pretty much wide and spread. There are probably multiple vaccines against the T virus after 30 years from the Dragon City incident. So, like, how is Leon infected? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Also, in this game, there are human enemies I haven't mentioned before, but I'll mention it now. There are human enemies in this game, just from one section, so you can forgive it because it's just one action sequence, so it's acceptable. And you also get to face a prominent Resident Evil character. Like, you get to face Hank as a boss fight, which is kind of like the Krauser boss fight, but worse in any way, in my opinion. It's just not as good. Also because Hank feels very spongy overall. so it's not as good as a Krauser fight. But yeah, it doesn't last very much, so it's a sequence that it's forgivable. It's just a nice diversion, you can say. I'm fine with human enemies being a thing for 5 minutes in the game. So I think I've said everything in terms of what I think about the game. I think the game is good. Probably I will give it probably between a 7 and an 8 because it's a very fun game, but when it comes to the extra content and the extra difficulty, there's not much else to do after you finish it. Insanity, I don't know. It doesn't. It feels like a bit too difficult for its own good. Like with Grace, you die in one bite at the beginning of the game. I assume if you get a steroid, you survive one bite. But I don't know. I haven't played that much yet. I have started Insanity not too long ago. I'm still at the care center, so I haven't even reached the half point when it comes to that difficulty. I can't comment too much, but yeah, it seems a bit too extreme. Uh, it's not like in Remake 4 where the professional was hard, but still kind of felt okayish. Here, I don't know. Even the enemies don't flinch at all. With Leon, they don't flinch. Maybe when you power up your weapons, they will flinch more. But so far, they really don't. Like, the blister heads are fucking crazy. Like, they will kill you in one hit if you let them. So you have to be very careful. You have to be, yeah. You can't play just at random in this game. You have to probably power up all your guns or avoid combat altogether with Grace on the maximum difficulty. But yeah, guys, I've said everything I wanted to say. I'll make another video and go and talk about the story, especially when it comes to the things I don't think work very well. You let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I'll catch you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay? And yeah, thank you again and have fun. Peace. Bye bye.